Welcome to the Capitalist Sage podcast. We're here to bring you advice and tips from seasoned pros and experts to help you improve your business. I'm Karl with Transworld Business Advisors, and my co-host is Rico Figliolini with Mighty Rockets Digital Marketing and the publisher of the Petrie Corner magazines. Hey Rico, how you doing today?
Hey Karl, good, thanks.
Today is Halloween, so we have a lot of trick-or-treaters going out tonight, hopefully, if the rain cooperates. Why don't we introduce some of our sponsors today?
Sure. On the scary Halloween day, there's actually a scary thing going on for some startups because they're going to have an opportunity to do a 3-minute pitch. 5 startups on November 14th. It's going to be part of the North Atlanta Tech Showcase.
That's right.
And that's here at Atlanta Tech Park.
Yep.
That's sponsoring us. This is the podcast room from that location. Partnership Gwinnett is putting this on. And there's going to be 9 startups doing a 3-minute pitch to investors, to other people within the industry. And that's going to be scary for them because they got 3 minutes. It's worse than the Shark Tank. At least in Shark Tank, you had 15, 20 minutes. Here, it's only 3 minutes to make that pitch. So, but Atlanta Tech Park is the place they're doing it. This is phenomenal. Here in Peachtree Corners, it's a great place. Along the track of the autonomous
vehicle, yep, right here in Curiosity Lab, right here in Petrie Corners, Atlanta Tech Park, being a home for entrepreneurs, tech startup companies. So it'd be great to see those come in. And if you're interested, check out the website. You could register, come visit that day, and see some of the future entrepreneurs of right here in Gwinnett County for you to showcase.
Partnershipgwinnett.com or atlantatechpark.com will take you there.
So we're glad to have Atlanta Tech Park as our home for the podcast, and we're especially glad today to have a fabulous guest, Beth B. She's an attorney that specializes in entertainment law and intellectual properties. And today we wanted to talk to those folks out there that have lots of creative talents and their endeavors takes them into both entertainment, artistry, and look at the business side of those types of careers and businesses. I know we speak a lot about the talent that people have, but they may not realize that they are also a business, and we figured let's chat about that some, and Beth was more than gracious to come and spend some time and talk to us about that. Hi Beth, how you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me out on this fun and festive Halloween day.
Absolutely fabulous to get to explore, on Halloween. There's a lot of artistry that goes around this holiday season, typically. But I'd like to start off by curious how you got into this particular area and field of law when you got started.
Sure. Well, I consider myself an entertainment attorney, and that does include clients who work in the music industry, film, television, book publishing, theater, really anything and everything involving the creative arts. I like to tell people I get to have the most fun a lawyer is allowed to have. And it is a lot of fun, but it's also a lot of work. And there are serious legal considerations when it comes to working in the entertainment industry. I really find interesting the intersection of business, art, and law. And so where I am in my career allows me to explore that unique intersection. At some point in my adult life, trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up, I realized that, aside from friends and family, some of the most important things to me in my life was music and art. There's really a historical reason for the significance of music and art. If you look back on the development of humankind, these things, we developed along with music and art. You take a trip to Europe, what do? You go to the art museums, you take in the local culture, the music, the architecture. So this has been a common thread throughout the entire life cycle of humankind, and it's something that I take very seriously, and it just means a whole lot to me as a person.
I always wonder when we think about that, some people may not realize that they're in this creative art. I mean, I think it's obvious musicians, and it's obvious maybe people that are in theater or actors and so on. When you talk to clients and folks that are in it, what are some of the other fields that people may not realize falls into these creative arts where intellectual property and so on becomes really important?
The beautiful thing is that art is everywhere. It's everywhere. You could take any business that may be operating, with a logo and a trademark. That's, a common thread among all businesses, regardless of what type of industry you're in. It starts with the copyright involved in the, any kind of unique image being used as a logo. And then there's always, the application to obtain a federally recognized trademark. That's also part of what I do. And I can really do that for any business, but I specifically focus on those services for clients in the entertainment industry. Art is a consideration in an industry as large as advertising. I've had to work with a lot of advertising companies to make sure that the artwork they want to use, or the music that they may use in their television commercials, that all of those are cleared and legally cleared to use. So considerations of intellectual property are everywhere, and certainly especially in the entertainment industry.
You say from the side of the artist that's producing that, what are things where you've seen people, they may call you after the fact, where they make mistakes or things they didn't know as they're producing and creating art and starting to share it? What are some of the things the mistakes people make along the way?
How much time you got? So, the music industry, which is really my true specialty, even within the umbrella of the entertainment industry, music is one of those things where it feels good. It's a creative outlet for a lot of people. They may not be thinking about making a career out of it. Everybody has to start somewhere, and usually it means starting out as a hobby. You pick up a guitar or you find a keyboard at the Goodwill, and you start making music. That's a beautiful thing. I hope that all children and even adults get a chance to explore their inner musician. I think what naturally happens is, for a certain group of people, that hobby progresses into a profession. They're like, hey, I'm actually pretty good at this, and people like what I'm making. Maybe I can spend all of my waking hours making music and earn some money from it and make a living doing it. So I find that transition can be really challenging for a lot of music makers. Primarily because if all you're doing is making music, then chances are you may not have a big enough budget to hire an attorney. But by entering into this space without proper understanding of the legal underpinnings of it, and without having a legal advocate to tell you what your rights are, people end up, giving away their music for free, in a way that does not advance their career. They end up getting taken advantage of, by people who know just enough to be dangerous and to cut you out of the equation.
Let me ask you, what are 2 or 3 things that a musician should know right off the bat that they should do to help protect themselves? If they wrote a piece and they're playing it, but they're not disseminating it yet, short of YouTube, Instagram, putting out their music, what 2 or 3 things should they be doing to make sure it's protected and someone else can't use it?
So there's a couple of things that come to mind. First is having a firm understanding of the legal term copyright. This is a term that a lot of people throw around thinking they know what it means, and most people don't. Right. One of the most important things to understand about copyright is that, if you are creating an original work of art and it's tangible, and in other words, it exists in some way, shape, or form on this earth other than just in your human mind, then you own a copyright to that work the moment it's created. You do not have to file a federal copyright. It's certainly a good idea to, but you have rights into your work the moment you birth it into the world.
So if I wrote a song and I put it out there on Instagram or Facebook, that's tangible, right?
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
A recording
Yes.
that's right out there.
That digital file on your computer, or more perhaps on your phone, is a tangible embodiment of your work, right? And you have rights to that. Just as everybody else has rights to their work. So be careful whose work you try to pass off as your own, because whoever created that work has rights to it. So that's maybe the second mistake that people make, is they see rampant copyright infringement happening out there in the world, which gives a lot of people the false impression that it's okay when it is not. You can get yourself into a lot of hot water, if you try to sample somebody else's work, if you misappropriate somebody's work, if you think, I'll just slide in this sample real quick and nobody will notice because it's under 5 seconds.
Right.
that's not how the law works.
So how does cover bands work? Those cover bands are out there
Yeah.
playing other people's music. I mean,
There is a precise answer to that, which is that the people who wrote the songs that the cover band is covering
Right.
have granted a license to what are called the performing rights organizations, which then turn around and grant a license to the restaurants and venues. Of course, the
Okay.
restaurants and venues have to pay for that license, but once they have it, they're allowed to play any song that they want.
Let me, if I can just understand that clear. A business owner and they're playing music in the background of whatever that store is. Do they have to, they have to pay for the right to play the song in their place of commerce? No matter what type, if it's a doctor's office playing the elevator music, is that all covered?
Yes, absolutely. And I have counseled business owners, including restaurant owners, about this, where they just want to play the radio in the background, or they've they have a Spotify account and they wonder, why can't I just play this? Well, it's because the people who wrote those songs own the copyright in those songs. And what those business owners are effectively doing is using somebody else's copyright to sell coffee or to sell golf clubs, right? And if you're going to do that, you should have to pay the person that's helping you create this commercial atmosphere that draws in customers. And they do.
That's funny because, as you're saying that, I'm thinking Starbucks. And I'm thinking those little music cards they used to have at one point with musicians on there that they would be playing. And I think that was sort of a give and take a little bit on their part to be able to play music in the background of some of the bands that they were promoting as Starbucks music in-house. Then I thought about the jukebox, the old time, slide the quarter in. After that went away, I think that's when royalties were really going.
So in Rico's initial example, he creates a piece of music and he puts it on YouTube. And if I were to find it in a business and start playing the music on YouTube, should he do something to make sure that his rights are protected, one, and two, he may be able to be compensated? What should he do?
So as a songwriter, Rico, what I would advise you to do is to join one of the performing rights organizations. And in the United States, we have three: ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC. When you do that as a songwriter, in some ways, that helps to, memorialize or put the public on notice that you are the author of that song. You are the creator, the owner, and so you can look up right now. Anybody out there listening can go to one of those three websites and look up their favorite song and find out who the actual writers are. You might be surprised, right? Because the person that you think wrote the song might not be the person who actually did. And so that's what you would do as a songwriter. You would affiliate with one of those three organizations, and in turn, those organizations will represent you when a restaurant owner comes to them wanting to play music. So the organization, let's say you joined ASCAP. ASCAP will issue a license, right? A license is just a fancy word for granting someone permission. ASCAP will license the right to the restaurant owner to be able to play any song in the ASCAP catalog that they want. And your song will be listed in the ASCAP catalog.
So just pay one royalty or monthly fee or whatever it is, and you can play any song within that setup.
Exactly. Yes, it's usually an annual fee. But yes, and the restaurant owner would do well to seek out licenses from all three organizations, because chances are any song you want to play is going to be represented by one of those three.
I guess Muzak came out at some point to avoid all that, right? Because it's regular, it's like a synthesized music, has nothing to do with any copyrighted artists.
It actually ties in perfectly with what I'm talking about, because what Muzak did, if I understand correctly, is they had their licensing fees built in with the PRO fees, right? Okay. So it was kind of a digital service that delivered the recordings, but also included the permissions for the underlying compositions.
Okay, so it's all in one place.
Correct.
And that's why you could use Muzak anywhere.
Yeah, and Spotify and Pandora, I believe, have commercial subscriptions now for places of business, so you can get licenses for everything all in one place.
So when I play Apple Music, and I pay an Apple fee every month for my Apple Music, I can play any song, download any song within the Apple library, I guess, which seems to be almost every song in the world, almost. But So I'm not paying anything more than that monthly fee, right?
Well, you're talking about personal consumption.
Yes.
Yes, so that's different.
Okay.
Very, very different from
Okay.
commercial consumption.
Right, true enough. Okay.
So if you're a business owner, you may have a personal Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon account that allows you to play all the music. But when you bring that into your business, and you're using it within your business, you have to get this additional license to do that.
Correct. It's called a public performance license.
Yeah, okay.
Not to be confused with live performance. Has nothing to do with live performance. Public performance means that somebody's music, specifically somebody's composition, is being performed in a public space, a place of public accommodation, which commercial places are, right? You know, Starbucks is open to the public. Target is open to the public. Airports are open to the public. All of those places that want to play music in a public space has to obtain a public performance license.
Like a town center.
Yep, yep. So with all of that, would Rico get paid then from the group that he's a member of, that he's paying some fees to?
The bottom line.
He would then get paid for some percentage. How's that done?
Yes. So there's two royalties, depending on the situation. One royalty may be available for the recording artist. So that might be the person, whose voice you actually hear, whose guitar riffs you're actually hearing. But there's a separate designation for who the songwriter is, right? So in this case, Rico being the songwriter, yes, he would be in a position to earn royalties from, for every time, Starbucks or Target or the airport, played his music. The algorithm by which an organization like ASCAP uses to determine how much you get paid is a trade secret. We don't actually know. But we can surmise that it at least has something to do with how much of the real estate of the airwaves, you occupy. The more your song gets played, the more royalties you'll receive.
That's very, very interesting. Does it expand out beyond music? So if let's take writings, and now we get digital media, people are putting out cat stuff on YouTube and creating funny videos, cartoon videos, plainer videos, all of those.
Or even doing a public service where they're the news media recording a crime just happening, and then they sell it to CNN. I mean, do they have copyright on those things?
Yes. And any kind of original creative content that you birth into the world belongs to you, and that would include silly cat videos, right? It may just be something that you created at home. You probably have hours and hours worth of cat videos, but you had that one little clip where they did something funny. That's that piece of video, that audio-visual work contains a copyright. And the owner of that copyright is the person who created it.
And there's a similar organization for video, for writers, for all these different creative types of art. There's a similar organization that manages that for them as well.
No, but that sounds like a wonderful idea. Right now, it's really if I have a silly cat video and you want to use it, for the Peachtree Corners podcast,
Right.
then we would do an arm's length transaction, for what that licensing deal would be, whether you pay me or I simply agree to grant you, a royalty-free license. Right now, that's something where you would have to approach the copyright holder directly to get that permission.
There are protections in place. I know there was I was involved in a website that was done once, and we used stock photo as position only, right? Because eventually we were going to remove the stock photo, put real photos in. 2 years later, a lawyer reaches out and said that there's a stock photo on that site you never purchased. Now, how they know it was never purchased, I don't know, but they wanted their fee, and they wanted it removed, but they wanted the fee at least to be paid. So there are protections. At least the free market allows protection in place for some things, right?
Well, you just perfectly identified one of the issues that modern day content creators are facing is that, and it kind of goes back to the question you asked earlier, what's one of the mistakes that people make in this industry? And it's really disseminating, their content without thought as to how to control it. It's like once something is out there, it's darn near impossible to retract it.
That's right.
Right? So we have had to, as an industry, get really creative in how we monitor, the use of our content. Make sure that anybody who is the recipient of a license, that they stay within the confines of that license, right? So there are guardrails. You can do this, but it doesn't mean you
Right.
can do that. And so there are little bots that you can put out into the internet to find out, where did this photograph go, right? And there are ways to get around that. But there are really sophisticated ways in which attorneys, and firms that represent content creators can track the usage of that content around the internet. And I'd really like to see a more uniform system to make that happen. I think that maybe blockchain might reveal some of the ways in which we can do that, but that's maybe a future development.
I mean, you're starting to tap into something that it seems an interesting area of policy, government policy. So you're also part of the Georgia legislature, representing the district is 95 here. Are there legislation that's happening locally or federally to help corral what's happening in this area, especially with the internet? Because I see so much content being generated, and I can't imagine how someone could begin to manage and regulate all of that.
I think when it comes to managing your content and policing it, I think one of the most important things anybody can do is just first to understand what your rights are. And hopefully they're listening to your podcast today and are starting to pick up on the importance of this, right? As far as legislation goes, we're very fortunate in Georgia that about 10, 12 years ago, we passed what is shorthand called the Georgia Film Tax Credit, which has been a great development for our state to attract the film business here. That is an engine of content creation, which has really been great. And so, down at the Capitol, we're certainly always, in defense mode of that tax credit. I think that it has so many benefits that we can't even really measure. That played a very important role in my decision to get involved in public policy and to run for office. I did not get into politics through politics. I got into it through the arts and entertainment industry, because I see firsthand how smart state policy can really shape an entire industry and change lives. Bringing thousands of new job opportunities to Georgians and helping to develop a generation that has grown up with film and creativity and appreciation for the arts right here in our own backyard. Georgia has a good history of legendary music, and I'm glad to see that happening now in the film industry. I bring up the film tax credit because there is a bill that has been proposed to create, I should say a couple of years ago, they did pass what is shorthand known as the music tax credit, to essentially grant the music industry some of the same benefits that we granted to the film industry, to try to make sure we have more film business here. We certainly have a lot of talent in Atlanta, but anybody who's been around the music industry in Atlanta will tell you that we lack some of the upper echelons of the business here, which, like a lot of the record labels that used to be here have left, or folded or just gone under. And so, there's lots that can be done to incentivize, music touring. That touring should originate in Georgia because that generates lots and lots of jobs. So they did pass a version of that bill before I arrived in the legislature. There are some issues with that bill. For example, it does provide some tax credits, some tax credits, just like the film tax credit. The difference is under that music legislation, those tax credits are not transferable. The transferability of those tax credits is key.
Transferable between businesses if they were purchased?
Correct, because the concept of a tax credit is that it gets applied to your next project, right? So, so some film companies may come here, make a film, they get the tax credit. Well, that has value. They can actually sell those tax credits to another company so that they can actually receive the tax benefit if that film production company doesn't otherwise have another project going on. Right. And so the same could be true of the music tax credit. We created this incentive for production companies and for touring companies to bring their business to Georgia, but we did not make them transferable.
Why? I mean, is there another rationale that if it's transferable, maybe that business doesn't come to Georgia? I mean, is there a reason why?
You'll have to ask the legislators who were there before me, but my understanding is that there was some hesitation about the bill to begin with, so they thought, well, let's just get something on the books and we'll fix it later.
Okay.
Well, we're now in the fix-it phase,
Wow.
but we have encountered some pushback there, even though I do think that these are common sense changes that have bipartisan support, and I really want to encourage the Arts and Entertainment Working Group, who currently is vetting that bill, to favorably pass it out of their committee so it can go to Ways and Means.
Can I ask you about the trends as far as the movie industry goes? Because there's always that talk that those credits will go away, and people are fearful of that, because then if that goes away, where's all the production going? That's what happened to, I think it was South Carolina?
North Carolina.
North Carolina,
Yep.
where they nixed it, and then a lot of their industry just went away. They came down
Came
here.
to Georgia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was good for us now, but there's still talk. I think when Kemp came in, there was some talk at some point about his campaign, about him wanting to do that, about removing that tax credit. Do you see any trends there heading that way?
You know, every public statement that I've heard Kemp say suggests that he is in support of continuing that tax credit. You know, some of his administration's actions this year would suggest that maybe they don't covet the film industry as much as I wish he did. You know, because everything kind of works in an ecosystem. You change one thing about Georgia law that has an impact on other areas. And I have serious concerns about things like HB 481, the anti-abortion bill, you know, which, you know, a lot of people don't want that here in Georgia. They think it is anti-business. And the film industry, for the most part, agrees with that. But I don't want to make a blanket statement about the film industry. There's certainly, you know, a multitude of political beliefs and affiliation within the film industry itself. You know, so one of the challenges that we have with the film tax credit, the reason we always have to play defense on it, is because if you look at pure numbers, you see how much the tax credit, quote unquote, costs in terms of lost revenue, and you might see, well, that certainly is a lot of revenue that we're losing. You know, you might question, are we even breaking even on that? Is there a return on that investment? And I think it's really hard to measure that, because if you do away with the film tax credit, all of that production business goes away, right? I mean, and to me, that would be a much larger hit to our state's economy than if you just looked at how much the tax credit costs in terms of real dollars.
I could echo that, and I see it. All of the film business that's moved into Georgia generates additional dollars in support. If you look at, from a real estate standpoint, Airbnb, since the film industry's come in, has taken off people that are investors in that part of the economy. All these folks need to be fed. So restaurants, catering, food, they need signage, they need support. But what I think is really understated is the longer the film industry exists here in Georgia, we're building another generation of folks that are supportive of the arts, skilled in the arts, able to create films, which are jobs, businesses tied around this other industry. If you look at what it did for California, how many people that live in California are artists are coming in there because the option is there. In New York City, the film where theater is really big in film, there's a lot of artists that live and support and businesses that go there. It could be short-sighted to look at that, how it impacts the other parts of the economy when you look at that. But I see small business owners that generate a lot of business from supporting the film studios here in Gwinnett County. There's at least 3 of them that I know of that are driving economic activities. But I see young people choosing career paths that weren't available 25 years ago before that was here.
That's right.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. You know, I'll add a couple of more, you know, long-term views to this. You know, one of the things I love about the film industry is that it has relatively low environmental impact, right? You know, people come in, they make a production, they don't leave a permanent footprint, with one exception, that, you know, it can sometimes create a lasting legacy for some of these locations. For example, Rabun County, you know, 30, 40 years later is still known as the birthplace of deliverance, right? It's
Good and bad.
kind of a local draw, right? Yeah, in Sonoya, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. I mean, this generates, additional ongoing opportunities in terms of film tourism. It can draw some of those hardcore fans to locations like that. So I think there's all kinds of benefits. Another one is a lot of people don't realize that Atlanta is a hotbed of advertising as well. The advertising community in Georgia is incredibly robust. Well, if you think about the life cycle of a film or television show, it's short term. You have people with these amazing talents in terms of on-screen talent or behind the screen, in front of the camera, gaffers, lighting, sound, all of that. Well, when they're not working on a film or television production, a lot of those guys work in advertising.
Yeah.
Right? So, to have those two industries able to kind of coexist side by side strengthens both of them.
I have a friend that's a steady camera operator, and he does films and so on. But in between jobs, he does a lot for commercials, advertising. But that would be harder to find folks like him if the industry didn't start generating the skill set and this capability within the market here.
Well, it took a decade, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there was hardly any just creating props for film sets or electricians or woodworkers or HVAC or, those, as much as we have that industry around, to build that infrastructure for the film industry, it's taken a decade to do that.
So I'm curious. I know these arts start when you're young. Entertainment, whether it could be sports, it could be music and art. And there's parents out there that have no real knowledge of how to guide and advise their. What would be some places where parents and people starting out in the industry could start to educate themselves, one, about the rights that you mentioned about that they have, but really, understanding what are some of the things they need to start putting in place as they're starting to develop these talents and start putting it out there? Where can they learn more about that?
Well, they can certainly come see me. It actually is quite common that when I am representing somebody, who's maybe a legal minor or, is still very young, the 18 to 21 range, that their parents will take, almost an ownership stake in their career. It's kind of, entertainment is kind of unique in that way. If you go off and become a scientist or a lawyer, your parents don't usually get involved. But when it comes to entertainment, it's arguably a good idea because so many people do get taken advantage of. And if your child is getting involved in film and television or music, they really need somebody that they can trust to look out for their best interests until the day when they can fully understand and appreciate the legal complexities of what they're doing. Certainly a minor child cannot enter into a contract without their parents' consent.
Right. Mm-hmm.
There are all kinds of labor laws, for minor children on film sets. So I think there's a lot that parents can do to first encourage their children to explore the arts. It's okay to, to make mistakes. It's okay to just experiment, whether it's with some kind of visual media or with film and television. I remember my parents have always had a video camera around. And so, that's where I kind of got started in high school. Was we'd have a class project and I would make it a film. I still have those, by the way. It's little things like that just kind of build up over time and may ultimately impact the career decisions that your child makes. So, I'll throw out a pitch for myself. If you want legal advice, parents, you are welcome to come in to be an advocate for your child. You can always, in place of your minor child, join some of the professional organizations that exist in Atlanta and around the country for various professions. So, for example, the music industry, we have the Recording Academy, otherwise known as the Grammys. Right, it's a great networking great networking organization, but they also do a lot of educational panels. There are equivalents in the film industry. Georgia Production Partners is one that comes to mind. The Atlanta Film Society puts on the Atlanta Film Festival,
Yes, right.
and they do a lot of
They have
education
a lot of
work.
workshops.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, if your child is into gaming, there's the Georgia Game Developers Association. There's a lot a parent can do, to encourage their child and to protect them. And even one of the best things that a parent can do is just to, while their child is having fun creating, art, if it seems like they're moving in a direction of that becoming their profession, it's never too early to start talking with your child about what it means to have a business, what it means to turn their art, into money, what it means to make a living in the entertainment industry, because there's not a lot of people that are in a position to have that conversation with artists, and I really wish artists would had the opportunity to have that conversation more often.
I'm curious. Did you play many instruments or did music, or what was your art of passion growing up?
I played clarinet in sixth grade band, and I play just enough piano to get by, but I actually don't have a whole lot of musical talent myself, which is partly why I do what I do, because I very much wanted to be involved in the arts and entertainment industry, but I had basically no artistic talent myself. So I thought, well, what's the next hardest thing I can do? And I thought, well, I've always been good at school. I will go to law school and become an advocate for people in the arts and entertainment industry.
Oh, that's fabulous. I know I was talking to someone a couple weeks ago, and they create music on their laptops, like so many people do. He does it for fun, and he spends hours. And I can think of how many kids do that today.
I mean, there's software on there you can do your own beats.
There's all
sorts of stuff.
They're doing their own videos and so on. But that conversation are early on, with their parents on starting to think about the business side of what they're producing is an opportunity that could guide them, because when they're making choices on it, it's fun and it's a game for them when you're younger. But some of them have some talent, and starting to think about putting those things in, whether it's joining the organization you mentioned, having a conversation with an attorney that specializes in this, so they can make the right choices early on because I always feel once their talent explodes, all of a sudden everyone's grabbing for pieces of it, and they're not prepared in those first few deals or the first few meetings they have. They're not equipped to understand their rights and how to do that. So
it's funny because in some industries like acting, right, you do have an agent. You have to have an agent to be able to close a deal on an acting gig with a company, right? So I mean, so some industries you have some protection. You still need a lawyer, though. I would think, right?
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
Well, I really want to thank you. You've given us a lot to share with folks that are starting to look at these creative arts and understand the business side. But just curious, do you have anything coming up or things that are coming up as we're getting late into to rounding out the final part of the year? Anything that you've got going on?
So a couple of things, between now and the end of the year, and before the next legislative session starts, is I've been doing a lot of outreach with some of the larger film studios in town. We just toured Eagle Rock Studios in Norcross the other week. I actually have a friend who works there, and he was excited about me running for office, and he knew what I did for a living and said, "Hey, why don't you come down to the studio?" So we finally made that happen. It's an amazing operation that they have going on, and you wouldn't even know it. It just sits in a quiet industrial park in Norcross. So I'm going to be touring Black Hall in a couple of weeks. We're waiting to hear back from a couple of studios. I mostly want some of these studios around town to know that they have an advocate at the State House. Right? I am the only legislator in Georgia, the only elected official who actually works in the entertainment industry. It's a topic that a lot of people down at the Capitol like to talk about, but I actually bring that professional experience to the table. Beyond that, we have the Esports Summit coming up. This is kind of a new tangential area of the entertainment industry that has really excited me and fascinated me, and I'm looking to get more involved in the game industry here. So I will be at the Esports Summit. It's kind of adjacent to DreamHack, which is coming
Yeah, I
up,
was gonna
and
say, it's running
yeah.
about the same time or something.
Yeah, it's first it's the Esports Summit, and then it kind of leads directly into DreamHack. So it's that weekend of November 14th to the 17th.
That's a great, the public's allowed into DreamHack, so I mean, that's a great place to go. If you're into gaming, I mean, it's just phenomenal. Thousands of gamers go in there.
It is. It has become the largest sports industry. Eclipsing all of the others, and it's remarkable. And I know there's a lot of young people there, and I want to make sure that when they enter into contracts with some of these teams, or they enter into some of these contests, that they have protection. So I'll be at that event, and I look forward to hopefully meeting some people there. My office is here at Atlanta Tech Park, so I'm not here every day, but if anybody's up here at the park, feel free to seek me out. I'd love to chat with you.
And they can find you on Facebook at Beth Moore Entertainment Lawyer.
Beth B. Moore. It's important.
B. Moore,
Yeah. I do include my middle name. There is another famous Beth Moore out there, so I have to distinguish myself.
That's right.
But yes, I do have a Facebook page where I post a lot of helpful articles, kind of introducing folks to some basic legal concepts to help them along the way. I have an Instagram account and Twitter account, so you can find me there at Beth B. Moore.
I'd love to share some of that stuff as we talk to business owners and a lot of folks that are thinking about their kids, especially you mentioned esports. I can imagine how many kids are trying to convince their parents that there's my career and future in that, but they're actually not lying to their parents.
It's true now.
But it is actually true to do that. But I think getting education and knowledge out there for folks, getting them in touch with folks like yourself to begin to protect them early on, and even incorporating building a business around what they do is really important for them to think about that from the beginning. Well, we want to thank our guest, Beth Moore, attorney specializing in entertainment law and intellectual property, and she's also our local Georgia state representative. You can reach her on various methods, both online and here at Atlanta Tech Park. And really thank you for sharing some of these tips and highlighting an industry that's so large globally. Yep. But when it comes from the business side, no one really is talking, exposing, and starting to get educated on this. And this is a great first step. So we love having you back and continue the conversation as time goes on. We also want to thank Atlanta Tech Park for hosting the Capitalist Sage podcast. If you're starting a business and looking for a great environment to work where you can get to meet people from diverse backgrounds, technology, entertainment, law, government, it's a great place to build community. And so you can start by attending an event at Atlanta Tech Park in Petrie Corners. If you like what you see, schedule yourself a tour and find yourself a home to build your business. I'm Karl with Transworld Business Advisors of Atlanta Petrie. Our business advisors are able to help consult, whether it's you're starting a business or thinking about starting a business, you're in business and trying to grow it, or you're trying to exit the business and find a buyer. Our team of consultants help people through each phase of that process. And Rico,
yes,
what you got going on?
I have a lot of things going on with many different hats. I'll just part down. I'm a publisher of Petrie Corners Magazine, and if you haven't seen this already, this is the latest issue that's come out.
Great episode. Another great issue.
Thank you. The next one is 20 Under 20. Some of the best kids in Petrie Corners are going to be highlighted that have either impacted the city or their family, or have done something great in sports, entertainment, science. So we're going to be that's a major cover story for the next issue that's coming out just before Thanksgiving.
Okay.
So we're going to be doing that. As far as Mighty Rockets and what I do, my day job, but I'm not doing the publishing part, is that I do all sorts of content marketing online for companies. Lately, I've done a few stop motion animation videos for product videos that I've been involved in, and we've been doing a bit of personal branding for a couple of clients that just want to build their personal brand online because of the services that they sell as a consultant and such. So it's been busy. I can't do that 9-to-5 thing that we keep talking about.
No.
And I've heard that book about working 7 hours a week and the rest of it you don't have to, or 7 days a week, or whatever, it's 7 hours. I can't do that. I think my clock doesn't stop till midnight.
I absolutely understand. Where can folks find and follow
Sure.
what
So
we do online?
they can find Well, if you search Google Capitalist Sage Podcast, you will find us. We're on
Yep.
iTunes, iHeart, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes, obviously. Leave a review there if you do listen to it there. You could go to livinginpeachtree-corners.com and you'll see a playlist on the homepage of the latest episodes that we've done.
Absolutely.
So-
And also on Facebook, Petrie Corners Life. You can go follow us on there every time we post a new episode. It'll come up in your feed, so you
Correct.
can check in there. And you can follow us on any of those others, so you'll be alerted when there's a new episode, and makes it really easy to share with friends and other
So
folks
you
that
can
might be
watch this
interested.
video on Facebook or on YouTube or listen to the podcast.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, everybody. Really, it's been a pleasure to continue to share these episodes with folks. So stay tuned for our next episode. All right, have a great day.
Take care.